So, good morning, everyone. Buenos dias, bon dia, and good morning to everyone in attendance today. Welcome to the first installment of the Talk Back Tuesday Black and Latin America Speaker Series. This is also the first Tuesday of Black History Month, so how appropriate and fitting it is that we unpack the global diasporic dimensions of Black communities with today's talk. My name is Dr. Jaira J. Harrington, Assistant Professor in the Black Studies Department at UIC. And this year's theme is Black foodways, culture, and cuisine in Latin America. And I will serve as moderator for today's talk, Afro-Peruvian gastronomic knowledge and practices. So here's the rundown of today's schedule. First, I will provide some background about the series. Second, I will introduce our speaker. Next, she will give her talk. And last, we will have open Q&A where comments in the chat will be acknowledged, and you can also raise your hand so that you can dialogue with our guest, and then we'll close for the afternoon. So this is a Talk Back Tuesday. Let's talk. Before we begin, I would like to offer some background about the series. With support from the Programming Committee in Latin American and Latino Studies and the Center for Latinx Literatures of the Americas, the Department of Black Studies will host this ongoing speaker series on Blackness in Latin America for spring 2023. This interdisciplinary series will feature scholars with expertise across Latin America, Peru, Mexico, and Brazil. And each event will provide an opportunity for participants to explore the historical and contemporary narratives about Black communities in Latin America and their cultural heritage through food. Today's speaker is Angie Edell Campos an Afro-Peruvian social researcher and activist. Professor Angie is a PhD candidate in social sciences with an emphasis in social anthropology at the Centro de Investigación y Estudios en Antropología Social in Mexico. She holds a master's degree in community development from the State University of Midwest, Paraná, Centro, Brazil. She also holds a degree in social work from the Universidad Nacional Federico Villarreal in Peru. The executive director of Ashanti Peru Peruvian Network of Afro-Descendant Youth and director of the International Institute of Afro-Descendant Research. Her research focuses on Afro-Latin American women, epistemic racism, and human rights. So let us welcome our guest, Professor Angie Edell Campos Lazo.
Thank you very much, Jaira. Good morning. Well, here is afternoon already. Good afternoon to everybody. As Jaira mentioned, my name is Angie Campos, and I want to present a little bit about Peru, our contribution as Afro-descendant population. And let me just start sharing my screen. Okay. Let's see. This is it. So how I denominate this little talk is as Afro-Peruvian gastronomic knowledge and practices. This picture that you saw here in my screen is a woman. Her name was Catalina Buendia de Pecho, and she is an heroine for the Afro-Peruvian community. And her history mentioned how she used some drink, homemade drink, for fighting against the colonization in our country. So that is how I want to introduce the importance of the use of the food, the drinks, the knowledge that have the Afro-Peruvian and African population in our country to fight, to resist, and to continue making a good presence in our country. This is a little bit the talking points. We will start with some Afro-Peruvian introduction because I know that it's difficult to think in Peru as Afro-Peruvian population. When we hear about Peru, we hear maybe Machu Picchu or Lima, this is the capital, but we don't believe that is also an Afro-descendant population in our country. So I decided to make a little bit introduction of Afro-Peruvian population. Then how we think about the gastronomic focus for our country is as intangible cultural heritage. So I also want to introduce this part the presentation. Then we will talk about how we use the animal carcasses and remains for create some kinds of food. Also, how was forbidden some sweets in the colony that was made for Afro-Descendant population, and then how the which kind of food and sweets were adopted as a national symbol for our country, as carapulcra and sopa seca also, and some final thoughts that I want to share with you. Let's see. So I want to start just, I don't know if some of you will speak Spanish, but if you speak Spanish, maybe you can understand this kind of paragraphs here. This is a kind of songs that the African and Afro-Peruvian people sing when they sell this kind of food and desserts, and they use it because they were prohibited prohibited to sell and prepare this kind of food. So they use this kind of things, this kind of phrases, just for the people know that they are going around the city and they are selling this kind of food. This thing is about the picarones. The picarones is a sweetness that we will mention in the another slides. But this is like they here they are. They call me picaronera because I sell picarones and these sweet picarones and hard picarones. So it's a really nice way to start selling and to maintain their practice, gastronomic practice, without being banished by the political and the police in these times. And we call this pregones, is the name in Spanish, pregones. They are called pregoneras or pregoneros. So a little bit about the Afro-Peruvian population. As you know, in 1492, was the arrival of the Spaniards to the American continent, and within it was also an enslaved African population. Also, it happened this in Peru, and the history or maybe the social media said that the African arrived here in Peru, and then they disappeared with the time. But this is not true, because we still until now, and we are more stronger with more stronger voices now talking about our presence in Peru. And it was a big presence that 60% of the population in all the urban areas in our country, it was African or Black, a Black population, 60%. So you can imagine it's more than the half of the population in Peru, in all the urban areas. The capital, Lima, the capital city, it was with Afro-Peruvian and African population. So this is why it's that important, all the contribution that the Afro-Peruvian population made. And until 1940, it was the last census that include the recognition of the Black population in Peru. And then just now was the first census was in 2017, was the last and first census in our country that registered the auto recognition of Afro-Peruvian population. It was the 4%. And this map, you can see where is located most of the Afro-Peruvian communities is in around all the coast of the country, because it was near to the ocean, and they have these big fields with rice, with sugar and everything. So that was why they are located in all the coast of Peru. So when you travel to Peru and if you want to know about the Afro-Peruvian population, you can go to these specific areas so you can see the families and all the contribution that they made. All this information that I mentioned to you is important for also to know how impact the African presence in our country in the social construction right now. So we start in the colony with a caste system, and now we can see and we can experiment a class system. Even it's hard to mention this in the social spaces because we have this kind of myth of racial democracy that maybe you know also and happen in Brazil, that everybody is the same, we don't have inequalities, but we believe that because it is part of the the discourse of the government, the political area, and as society, we believe that we don't have class system, that we don't have inequalities, but we do have. And also it's important that all these colonial process and everything, it concluded in a racism and pigmentocracy that we can see and we can experiment also nowadays. And this kind of cartoon is a little bit how we express that it's not so different how the indigenous and African and Afro-Brazilian population were living in 1821 until these times. It's not so much difference, maybe it's different the name of the economic activity that they are made in, but it's the same ubication in the social scale and everything. So, and this is important because we will mention in another slides how the gastronomic practices also has to be with this. As I mentioned, the intangible cultural heritage, why we promote this kind of cultural way to recognize these practices, because as all the colonial process was really hard in Peru, and most for the African population, because they tried to banish and eliminate every kind of African place in our country. So the only thing that all this political and economic process didn't do is to eliminate our ways, our expression, our knowledge, our practices, everything that was in our minds. That's the only thing that they didn't eliminate. So that's why all our gastronomic, in this case, gastronomic contribution, you will not see like, we use this vegetable that was also in Africa and we bring with us and we create some kind of food. This is not what happened in Peru. What happened was the knowledge, the ways, the techniques, the expressions, how all this information that was in our minds, and we use it in some countries in Africa. We bring that knowledge and recreate that in our country, mixing with some maybe indigenous products or local products. It was this kind of heritage that we have in our country. So we have a list of protected areas, and one of them is the gastronomy, but also we have the music and dances, the language and oral tradition, because we have, even we don't have a particular language for the Afro-Peruvian population. We have a way to speak Spanish that is characteristic for the Afro-Peruvian population. So also we have the ritual, the faith, the celebration, and the artistic and plastic expression, that arts and craftsmanship. And this is a little bit about our people as a young Afro-Peruvian population. And we will start talking about the main issue of the presentation, that is the use of the gastronomic, right? And this gastronomic, I devise with this first, that is the use of animal carcasses and remains. And we saw three dishes here, the anticucho, chanfainita, and sangrecita. So what was in common of this kind of, this is the anticucho, this is the chanfainita, and this one is the sangrecita. And this is a choncholi that is part of the anticucho. It's also used with remains of animals. What was in common of these dishes? It was that first, They use all the remains of the animal because the first standard of the meat was just used by the high class. So all the work class, they didn't have available this kind of meat, like the chicken, the beef, and everything. So they just use, for that reason, the remains. And with the remains, they try to replicate some kind of dishes that was in their own countries. And another thing that is common of this is the fusion with the Indian seasoning that I was mentioned before. So it's the Indian seasoning because they have all these the spices and the seasoning, some herbs also that was used in that is using in the Indian population with kind of African practices. So also when I visit some friends in Cape Verde, for example, they have a little some dish that is really similar to the anticuchos, and that's why is this kind of connection between the foods, because it is this kind of African practices reply in our country. Also, it is common that was this kind of dishes, they was offered in open spaces in the streets, because as I mentioned before, it was prohibited for the African population sell this kind of food because it was banished, because it's dangerous for the health. So they usually sell this in the open space, in the streets, singing this kind of pregones. Also is these practices, it has their origin in the colony, but it is still enforced nowadays. So when you visit, if some of you visit already Peru, they will say, oh, you need to try anticuchos, for example, this kind of dish, because it's like a common dish in all the country, really popular, really famous also for sell Peru itself. And also it is the gastronomic syncretism. It's the way, all the philosophy that is inside this kind of fusion, how they develop these dishes, talking, exchanging the practices with the indigenous population, with the local population, with the local herbs, with the vegetables. So it is kind of fusion that have their own philosophy. No, it is not just food for don't be hungry. It is food that have their own history, their own process, cultural process. This is the way that you will see in the street how they sell anticuchos. You will see a person, mostly is black woman, selling this kind of barbecue with the anticuchos in the streets. So you can, it's really famous here in most in the city. And this is another picture. This is a real picture in the streets with all the anticuchos. This is all the remains of the beef, all remains of beef with a lot of spicy, and it's really tasty for us. This is another dish, is the chanfainita, and it's also making with remains of the beef with lamb belang and chili and mashed potato, and it is accompanied with rice or maybe with corn. It is a food that usually eat inside the house of the families. So you maybe once a week or once each 2 weeks we eat chanfainita in our homes, because it's a normal food that we have in our family with our mothers and grandmothers and everything. And this is a way also of the sangrecita that have the same. This is with sangrecita is for the blood of the beef. So all the blood of the beef, this is like cook with a lot of seasoning and spices and everything. So this is usually how the mothers and grandmothers, they say when you are pregnant that you need to eat a lot of sangrecita because it will make good with for your blood cells. So this is also part of the family culture. Another one is the sweetness in the colony, and was forbidden, mazamorra morada and picarones, and was forbidden because they say that it's so much sweet, it may be dangerous for your health. So they say, okay, all the high class, they cannot eat this kind of desserts because you will sick. And that's why it was most consumed by the working class. And you can see here how it looks. This is the mazamorra morada. It is made with a purple corn. Maybe you already know this purple corn that is really distinctive of in the Indian part of Peru. With some flour made it by potato, with some fruits, and it's hot with cinnamon, sugar, and it's a really sweet and tasty dessert. And also you can we usually eat the mazamorra morada together with the arroz con leche, like rice with milk, something like that. So we usually eat together that kind of sweetness. And also is the picarones. The picarones is like, we can say that it's like the Peruvian version of the donuts in United States. But it's made it by, and it is a long process. It takes like 3 days for make the picarones, because you need to make all the dough and to wait until these grow up and everything. So it's really hard work to make the picarones. And usually in the families in every city, small town, you can see in one corner one woman selling the picarones outside her house. So it's eating with a sweetness that is made is made in the house. So these two desserts are really important, and also are part of the national tradition of desserts. So as Peru itself, when Peru sell all the traditional food and traditional places for know about Peru, they mention mazamorra morada and picarones, right? So these two elements also is important, and the origins is recognized with the Afro-Peruvian women. Also, it is important because this kind of dessert they present in a festivity that maybe you know, because it's really famous for the Afro-Peruvian migrant population, is the Señor de los Milagros, Lord of the Miracles. In this festivity, that is one of the biggest festivity in our country, you can see all the time a woman selling picarones or mazamorra morada. As I mentioned, it was forbidden to sell in the street, but they use the pregones for identify and selling this kind of dessert. Also is again this syncretism between the local and Andean inputs, how they recreate this kind of sweetness, and also is a kind of expression that was passed from generation to generation. My mother sell this kind of picarones. My mother used to sell outside my house, and she has her own particular way to make the honey of the picarones. And maybe the mother of my friend, she have their only way to make the honey for the picarones. So it's like every family develop like their own secret ingredient for this. So it's a really, as I mentioned, it's not just a dessert. No? It's an accumulation of knowledge, of tradition, of expression of my grandmother that made through this kind of dessert. And this is how they recreate the African woman selling this kind of desserts in the street in the colonial times. Also, it is this Afro-Peruvian creation that they adopt as a national symbol, as I mentioned before also. It is the tamales and turrón de Doña Pepa, this kind of dishes that the political, the social power in our country, they use this kind of dishes to say, this is Peru. Because if you want to know Peru, you need to try to experiment turrón de Doña Pepa, or you need to try the tamales, because this is Peru. So this is the kind of national symbol that they adopt for these kind of dishes. So the tamales is part of them. Even it is a big, like around all America, you will see all the American continent, you will see each country have their own way to prepare tamales. So, and it borns in Mexico, we know, but it is spread around all the Americas. So in our case, in Peru, we have our only way to make the tamales with the African knowledge and practices. You can see if you have to, you want to visit Peru, you can note Chincha. Chincha is a place when you can eat this kind of amazing food, tamales, the sweetness, because it's like the black point, the black population is in Chincha. You can see they are maintaining their own traditions and practices and everything. Even you can see Afro-Peruvian population around all the country. It is some kind of places, locations that where you can find a more reunite the families, the Afro-Peruvian families. So we have our only way to make the tamales that we will see here, for example. Let me just, I want to show you this, a little bit of this video that we made as activists. We try to, let me see, it's here. Okay. No, just a minute. It's here. Okay. So as an activist, we try to okay, to show how it is connect this kind of ancient knowledge with the youth population in these times. So I will show you, this is a part of a video that Megan, Afro-Peruvian blogger, it called Una Chica Afro-Peruana. You can find in the internet and the social media. She's really famous now because she's created a lot of audiovisual materials for show the reality of the Afro-Peruvian population. So this is a video that she made about her family talking and creating the tamales. So I will just play a little bit for you now.
Donde tú aprendes más, no se aprende con un cuaderno y un lápiz, se aprende haciéndolo. Y un día me vino la necesidad de hacer tamales, mi hija me enseñó y comencé a hacerlo primero como un hobby y después fue parte de mi vida durante varios años. Pude hacer tamales solo para sobrevivir y me fue bien.
A muchas personas les cuesta creer la realidad de cómo el racismo afecta en nuestras vidas. Hoy, mi tía Meche es mi ejemplo de cómo, a pesar de las adversidades, ella continúa. No es fácil ser mujer negra en el Perú. Tanto ella como yo lo sabemos. Las reglas de este juego para todos nosotros no empezaron siendo justas y aún así continuamos. Ahora recién me doy cuenta que los tamales no solamente son una herencia culinaria. Esta también fue y es una herramienta de supervivencia y resistencia de muchas mujeres racializadas ante las adversidades que nos da el Perú.
I will just continue playing this. So this is a little bit of the video, and you can see a black woman talking about how they use the tamales, they create the tamales for make money and give the studies for their children, for take food have food in their own house, for their own family. So it is not just, as I mentioned, the food. It is how we can also, as Afro-Peruvian women, convert this kind of knowledge in a way to make our family develop, to our children's study and work and be better and everything. So you will have my presentation, then you can check all this video is with subtitles in English, so you can check how they mix the tamales. This is kind of the dog of the tamales, how they wrap the tamales with the banana leaves. So it is a really nice video to see all this philosophy behind the tamales in specific. And as she does is a lot of social activists now, they are trying to reconnect this kind of ancestral knowledge and practices for the young people to not forget where we all these kind of contributions. Also, it is the turrón de Doña Pepa. It is another sweetness. It was made for Josefa Marmanillo. This is a kind of representation of her, and she was an ex-enslaved. She was a free woman, and she gets sick of her hands, and she created like a sweetness for offering to the Señor de los Milagros, the Lord of the Miracles. And as a reply, she was cured. She had cured all her arms. So it was a miracle that she mentioned, and this is why we in this festivity, Señor de los Milagros, you can see all the people going to buy this kind of dessert, the turrón de Doña Pepa. This is how it looks. You can see like long lines of people going to the city, to the center of the city, for buying this sweetness, because it's a kind of religion practice to eat this sweet in October, because in October is the month of the Lord of the Miracles. So we need to do it because it's a kind of a religion reflection that we have with this sweet. So it's again this another reflection that we have or we put in the food. Carapulcra en sopa seca. This is a special dish because it is like it is famous, these phrases when they say my aunt she knows how to make the most tasty carapulcra en sopa seca. And maybe my friend, she said, no, my grandmother, she made the most tasty carapulcra en sopa seca. So it's like this kind of dish that gives you proud to be Afro-descendant, to be Afro-Peruvian. So if my mom, for example, she usually made this kind of dish in our parties. So we have a party, a birthday, and she made this sopa seca and carapulcra for sharing with all our family, and it's like a symbol of proudness that we know to how to do it because we are Afro-Peruvian family, and this is our origins. So this is how we connect also this food with the symbol of proudness. And this is a picture of how we have festivals and ceremonies, and they making big panes. They make this is the carapulcra, and it's a really big festivity for us. Also here I will show you a little bit of this, how it hears the pregones, the way that they have to sell the food in the streets, because it's really particular way to sell the pregones. Let's see here, it is in YouTube here, so you can hear a little bit of this.
La lechera, leche purita casera, leche de burro y de vaca. Ay bizcochero, chancayán muy bueno, compre casero.
So this is a kind of, this is how it sounds, the pregones. The first one of the woman was about the woman that sell milk And she will, I'm the milker, have your milker, this is a hard milker, I am the milker. So it's really repetitive, this kind of pregones, but the point is to sell the food or the dessert or the dishes that you have. And the second one was a man, because it also means use the pregones, selling some kind of bread, that is the bizcocho. So this is how it sound, the pregones. I don't know if you have something similar. I will like to okay, it's here. I would like to hear if you have something similar as these pregones, because I believe that it's a really important way to, or a strategy to resist for this kind of banish of the political and police made to the African and Afro-Peruvian population in these times. And this final thought, just for closing my intervention, is to talk about this Afro-Peruvian resistance and permanence. As you saw, these are foods that were made in the colonial process, and it was so behind, but we continue passing through generations, and is until now are famous, are popular, and are part of this contribution of the national identity. And this is important because when we see, for example, in some in the television, some clips talking about travel to Peru, you need to know Peru, they usually put some of the images of this kind of dishes to sell Peru, but they don't sell the people that create these dishes and the people that made these dishes what they are now, these tasty and these spices and sweetness, nice dishes that we have now. So at the national level, the country, the political, the society, they mention these dishes as a proudness, we have the best food in our country, but most of this good food and best food were made and created for African and Afro-descendant women. And this is not sharing. So it's like you sell the product, but you don't sell, or you don't even mention the people that create the product. So this is a kind of contradiction that we have with our food and with the place that have the Afro-Peruvian population in our country, and is connected in how is stigmatized this kind of food. Because, for example, the tamales, we know that tamales is tasty, we sell the tamales, the idea of tamales as proudness. My mom, she sell tamales with me when we were young, because with the tamales we can pay my education. But the people in the street, they call me tamalera, as an insult, as a way to tell me my blackness. So I don't know if it is clear this, because it's really complex, this part, how they use, as they relation this food with the Black woman. So some people that racist people, they use the food to mention your blackness without telling you that you are Black. So they don't need to tell me you are Black. They told me, oh, tamalera. And this is the way that they have to mention my blackness with stereotypes, with bad connotations. So this is stigmas that is still present in our society. So it's a contradiction, right? Because we love the tamales, we buy the tamales, we feel proud about the tamales, but we make we stigmatize and we insult the people that create the tamales. And another point is, as I mentioned, the recovery of these practices. As activists, Afro-Peruvian, youngs now are trying to recover all these kind of practices, so the people can see not just the product, but also the histories that are behind the product, and the people that were creating this kind of products. And I think we are in this part of our social contribution right now. And this is another picture, so you can see how different is the Blackness and the Afro-descendant population in our country. And this is a picture when you can see in our times, in the maybe 90, how is a Black woman, old Black woman with a young Black woman selling the picarones at the streets. I think this image is like a kind of representation of this intergenerational learning and sharing these practices, gastronomic practices between the women in our families. So this is it. And if you have any questions or you want to share with me also your thoughts and your own experience, I will really open to hear right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Angie Campos. Thank you for that fascinating presentation. And the cultural heritage of Afro-Peruvian cuisine is characterized, as you mentioned, by its mainstream national visibility, while obscuring the contributions and knowledge production of Black and Afro-descendant people through their unique foodways and their unique experience. And your presentation helps to recenter Black communities in the conversation around Peruvian identity and culture. And we are fortunate to have had this presentation, and we're so glad that you were able to share it with us today. So now we will welcome comments, questions, and reflections from the viewing public. So please add questions, raise your hand if you'd like to be acknowledged and would like to ask some questions about what it is that we've seen today. Thank you. Professor Jewell.
Hi, I'm sorry to have been late to what was really a great presentation from what I caught. I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about some of the ways that particular food or foodways are kind of are linked with this idea of well, as you mentioned in your last anecdote, racial slurs, kind of like this way that we racialize food and foodways in negative ways. I'm just curious about what that experience is like in the Peruvian context.
Thank you, Joseph. I go, right, Jaira? Yeah, okay. So as I mentioned here, it was one that the tamales. And for example, we connect the pregones with the food and with the person that is selling this food or were preparing this food. So it's this kind of relation between these three elements, and these are racialized for our society. So it was also this big disconnection that we had a publicity advertisement in the television that sell, for example, tamales, la la. And then I don't know, this was famous advertisements about the tamales, and the person that was selling the tamale, it was a Black man. He was singing tamales, tamales, and he was selling the tamales. And this kind of advertisement was used as with a racial connotation for the people on the streets. So I was with my mother or my father, Black father, walking on the street, and you can hear from another corner of the street one person screaming tamales, and that was like the Black connotation that they mentioned, that they used it. So they don't need, you cannot like, how you can say, hey, you are being racist. They say, no, I'm just saying tamales. And this is not racist tamales, but they are made it with this kind of connotation, right? They say tamales just for telling about your blackness and in a bad, with a bad connotation. So this happened with the tamales. This happened with the picarones. And this happened with the sopa seca. So we have this kind of food, special food that you can relation immediately with a Black woman preparing this food, and this will use it as a racial, with a racial connotation for the society. You know, this is really common, and we don't have how to say that this is racial, because all these democracy myth that I mentioned before, that they don't believe that this is racism in our country.
Thank you, Angie. I'm going to address some questions that we have here. I see that Liana wants to ask a question directly to you, and then we'll go through some of the questions here in the chat. But Liana, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't unmute at first. First off, thank you for sharing your amazing presentation. It was really informational, and I'm really glad I got to hear it. So I can't exactly remember, but there was a slide that I had a question on, and it was related to, I believe, the census that was taken in Peru in 2016, I think, or 2017, and it was like 4% only recognize like their African or you know, ancestry, or you know, lineage. And so I guess my question is like, in Peru exactly, like, is there a distinction between like, you know, Black I don't know, is it Peru's? I don't know what, like, it's American Peruni? I don't know, but Peru people, like, is there a distinction between their like Blackness and then like Peru, Peru? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I don't want people of Peru. Is there a distinction between like true Peru people and like Black Perus? Like, is there a separate like kind of category in that sense, or is it determined, like, what are the factors determining it? Is it your skin color, you know, your food, your you know, hair texture? Like, I guess I was just wondering, what are the factors determining kind of the distinctions or categories that possibly separate people in Peru? So
Yeah, thank you, Liana. Yes, this is a really big question, because it involves different process that we were as Afro-Peruvian population. And first, I will share this slide that you mentioned, so it's more easy to understand. We have all these census, this process of census in our country, and we had until 1940 the census, where the people that made the census, they saw your skin and they say, okay, you are Black, or you are mestizo, or you are indigenous. It was until 1940, that was our last national census, that made this kind of identification of Black population. It was just how the people that made the census, this person to read your color skin, and they write, okay, you are Black, you are not Black, you are mestizo, you are white, and everything. After that, we didn't have any census to continue this process of identification, ethnic identification in our country. And this had a lot of consequences at the social level, because as society, we believe that we are equal, we are the same. So all of us are Peruvians. We are Peruvians. We don't have any distinction between us. This is the common sense belief that we have as a society. But in the 2017, we have our first census that addition the question of auto-identification. So in this time, the person that made the census need to ask the another person how you identified ethnically. You identify as a black, as indigenous, as white, as mestizo. What are you? So the people say, okay, I am Afro-Peruvian, I am indigenous, I am mestizo, I'm white. So this happened in 2017. And that's why we are now, as with this national census, we have the number of 4% as Afro-Peruvian population. But it is a really difficult tool that we have, the census, because if since 1940 and even before of that, we creating all our population, Peruvian population, that we are the same, we don't have inequalities, we don't have different skin, we don't see colors of skins, we are the same. So how we create, we didn't create for that reason the ethnical identities. So a lot of Afro-Peruvian population right now, they are blackness than me, and they believe that they are mestizos, or they are, or as my skin, and they say I'm white, because we don't have this strong ethnical identity created in our country. So that's, and also because of all the racism, the stigma, we don't want to say that I am Afro-Peruvian or I am black. I don't want to say that, because if I say that, I will say, or I will say also that I suffer racism, that I am discriminated by my color of skin. So that's why it was a difficult question for us as a Peruvian, and it was also a big fight of the social organizations to introduce in this census the question of auto-identification, because it's difficult for the Peruvian people to look their own ethnical heritage. It is difficult for us, because if we see this ethnical heritage, we are saying that we have differences, and we are saying that we have inequalities, and we are saying that we have racism in our country. And this is all the things that at the political level, they don't want the people said or believe. So that's why it's difficult. But we don't have any ways to see our ethnical identity right now. We just have the auto-identification. So if I, as Angie, had a strong process of identity in my Afro-Peruvian family, I will say that I'm Afro-Peruvian. But if I didn't have this strong process of identity in my family, I will say maybe that I'm mestiza. So it is a little bit complicated for that.
Thank you, Angie. We have a couple of questions to address in the chat. Alyssa asks, which food do you feel holds the most cultural significance and why? What story does this food tell you?
I'm sorry, Jaira, I lost a little bit the signal. Can you repeat, please?
I'll repeat. So which food do you feel holds the most cultural significance and why? What story does this food tell you?
Okay, well, the food that I mentioned in the presentation, I believe that these have the most like characteristic for the Afro-Peruvian population, because we have more of that. We have more food that you can see the historical and everything, but of all of this, maybe the sweet of the turrón de Doña Pepa, this sweetness that I mentioned of the woman that create the sweetness, maybe this have a more concrete history and its relation with these national festivities, so have a national embrace of this dessert. So it maybe is this one, and also the carapulcra and sopa seca, this last dish that I mentioned, this mixing, because this mix everything, this mix the Indian fusion, the African techniques, the local vegetables, also the Italian contribution because it's with the spaghetti. So we have this kind of syncretism, gastronomic syncretism of the food with the carapulcra and sopa seca, and the people have in their minds that the only person that can create a nice, tasty carapulcra and sopa seca is the Afro-Peruvian woman. It is so strong, that relation, that when you see a flyer that said, "Oh, I sell carapulcra and sopa seca," people ask, "It is made by Afro-Peruvian woman?" And if they say yes, oh, okay, I will buy it because I know that for sure it's really tasty, this food. But if they say no, it's made by my mother, she's a mestizo, I will die of the tasty of this food because it's not made by the Afro-Peruvian woman. So it's this kind of a strong relation between the experience of the Afro-Peruvian woman with this kind of dish.
A few more questions. So which one of the foods do you like the most that you mentioned?
Oh my God, that is most difficult because I really love food. So I really like all this kind of food. Maybe my heart is with the carapulcra and sopa seca because it's a really consistent food and reminds me to my grandmother, reminds me my childhood, my parties with the family. So maybe it's this, most than for the tasty because I really love food. So I also cook, so I like to create all of these kind of foods. But for the emotional, I don't know, experience with the food, it can be the sopa seca and carapulcra.
You. Nicola asks, are the banana leaf tamales distinct to Peru? So the process of folding tamales, or is that just kind of a generalized experience with creating tamales, and the internal parts of it are have a bit more variety?
Yes, the most common use for the tamales here is the leaves of the corn, the leaves of the corn. This is the most common way to make the tamales. The special tamales that are like the characteristic for the Afro-Peruvian population is made with the bananas leaves. I think the preparation is not different. The difference is not in the preparation of the banana leaves, is the preparation of the dough, of all this combination between the corn and the pork or chicken or the spices. I think this is the one that made a difference. The kind of spices that they use for this preparation, more than the leaves. The leaves, it gives the flour, the tasty outside, right? But I think the most characteristic way to create is about the dough of the tamales.
Thank you. And a reflection and also a question. So Maddie says, the Pregon song reminds me of sound bites in televised food advertising and how it's meant to get stuck in your head. So you subconsciously think about the product even after you leave the market or stop watching the commercial. So the kind of lyrics going, repeating, milk is being sold, I've got milk. It makes you think about it, even if maybe you weren't thinking about purchasing it that day. And Esther also mentions here, thank you for this wonderful presentation. I am wondering if there are any pregonero influencers on social media that you know about, and to what extent is this culture of the pregón, is it on social media? So is there some sort of influencer culture now with it?
Yes, this is a little bit sad because the pregones stay with, it was passing by generation until the generation of my grandfather, for example. So our fathers, mothers, they don't use anymore, they didn't use anymore the pregones, and our generation also didn't use the pregones anymore. So we try to make, I don't know any influencer in social media that are pregonero or pregonera. I believe that we don't have now. But what we create, for example, in one activity of our organization was a festival of pregoneros, and it was made in Chincha. And we invite all the persons that made pregones. And it was mostly old people, adult people, old people, women and men, and mostly men, in these times, that they were competing to create in the pregones, because it's also like freestyle, because they create in that moment the pregon and everything. So it was really nice way to bring again, to wake up again the pregones practices. But we don't have young people creating pregones right now, because the pregones had their own objective, that was sell the food in the street. So right now we don't have this kind of prohibition for sell the food in the streets. So you can know that every Saturday that woman will be outside her house selling picarones. So she don't need anymore the pregones, because it is like the people know that she will be selling at this time, at this hour, this kind of food. So that's why the pregones start to disappear. So now the people that made the pregones, that made just for fun, just for remember those times and their own family, that it's not so alive now.
Yeah, thank you. And I think even our conversation in its own way is helping to keep these traditions alive and also give them the kind of respect and dignity of what the profession of, for example, selling tamales or selling different food and items in the street was not necessarily ascribed to during the time of its height, but recognizing its history and importance is a way that we are exercising that. A couple of students have asked, do you have any recommendations for Afro-Peruvian literature? I think you mentioned a blogger and social media influencer who speaks about her experiences as an Afro-Peruvian woman. Are there any documentaries that you would also recommend, or any sort of media that students and onlookers can experience to learn more?
Yes, I want to share with you this, so you can maybe make a screen. This is De Palenque, Literatura y Afrodescendencia. This is activity that made some social activists, Afro-Peruvian activists, that they connect different Afro-Peruvian people that write some chronics or make poetry, or they are academics, so create a little bit of an article and everything. So it will be interesting if you can check a little bit of this revista, this site. You will see different contributions here at the activist and academic level. So maybe this will help you with this kind of information. And also we have now different it's mostly young people, young Afro-Peruvian, that we are creating some channels in the internet for showing about history, about traditional knowledge of the women or men. So you can find it now. It's more easy by the social media, but we don't have enough. So it's not enough for all the information that we need to share. But we have like this, the Palenque, una chica afro-peruana that I mentioned, and also it is one of history. I will try to open here for you. Because it is here. You will find out it's a site that is called Afro TV Peru. Afro TV Peru, and it is this is, for example, a way. This Afro TV Peru is an initiative or of some young people, and they make an interview with some activists, academics, and they have this part of history information about the Afro-Peruvian population. Also, they have the part of the entrepreneurship, women in gastronomic. You can see here the picarones, everything, culture, books. Follow this site. Is really nice how they are creating this. It is a alternative television that is focusing in Afro-Peruvian contribution. So this is another example for you.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Angie Campos. One thing that I did want us to get to, I know that we need to be mindful of time as well, is that if you could express some of the activities that you have within the organizations that you work with, what are some of the platforms, and what are some of the activities that are going on with the organizations that you work with?
Yes. I want to share with you. This is the organization. Is what I'm part of two organizations right now. One is most focused in the social activities, local activities, training, educational activities, and the another one is focused in the research in the academic area. So this one, Ashanti Peru, is a social organization led by a young Afro-Peruvian population, and we have here different programs. So we have here the Observatory of Racism and Discrimination in our country. We create the Afro-Peruvian Library, for example. It's a place that you can find virtually and also presentially in our office. You have the place for legal assistance and psychological assistance in cases of racism and discrimination. Everything of this is for free for the Afro-Peruvian population. We impulse also these young people that create the Afro TV Peru. And our main project is our training program. So we have training programs for Afro-Peruvian young people so they can know about their history, their identity in a positive way. It's like a recreation of their identity, because they enter to this place, to this training, just knowing that they have dark skin, but they don't know anything positive about their history, about the traditions, about their identity, and they finish this kind of training process believing in themselves that they have a strong identity when they finish this kind of process. So you can find here some of the information. We create also some documentary of our work. And yes, this is Ashanti Peru. I will share also in the chat so you can check. And also I have here in Afro, this is more academic space. what we are trying here is to connect different academic activists from the Latin America, so we can together create like international research about the contribution or the reality of the Afro-descendant population. So we are also we connect with some colleagues from Europe and from United States. So we want to connect this to make more visible the relation of the racism and the discrimination or around through all the continent, and to show in the academic level, because most of the academic level they believe that the racism is not exist and everything. So we need to bring all the African, Afro-descendant voices and talks and way of talks in this also academic level. So that's why we create in Afro, and we are trying to make more stronger in Afro, creating some kind of programs, academic programs, or I try to make it's like, because for us or for them as students, they believe that it's difficult, for example, to create a thesis or a research of the Afro-Peruvian population, because they don't find the help of the professors or of the institutions. So we as in Afro, we want to make this process more easily for them, and to bring the support, to bring the knowledge, to bring professors that can help these students to continue with their research about Afro-descendant population, so we can make more stronger this our presence also in the academic level. So this is the two organizations that I'm contribution, and I will share also the links here in the chat.
Thank you so much, Professor Angie Campos. And I know that students have to go, so at 12:15, that's when we release for the day. So you are dismissed, just so you know, it's fine. But I would like to inform everyone that we will return to Talk Back Tuesday and Black and Latin America Speaker Series on February 28th at 11 a.m. with Professor Doris Garriaga Coleman, and her remarks will discuss Black foodways in Mexico. So you are invited to attend that as well. Thank you again so much, Professor Angie. If anyone has any questions or would like to continue the conversation, just stick around for a little while. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much.